Good morning, coffee chat friends and fellow flat belly travelers. We just had a couple days ago another fantastic coffee chat meeting where there were, I think, about 18 of us in the room. It's a great turnout. The idea was self-image. We didn't institute really. We come up with a couple of people had suggested we use a method to have everybody be able to have their input. So we had a little stick. We passed it around at the beginning and everybody gave input on what they felt the topic meant to them. The topic was self-image. For the most part, as one guy pointed out afterwards, most people had something along the point of they would like to improve their self-image, or that they didn't really like their self-image, which was probably why whoever suggested it, because he wouldn't have suggested it if it wasn't a need, if it wasn't a perceived need in his experience anyways, that self-image is important. There was a lot of things shared there. In fact, I've often said that to myself anyways, that the measure of the interest in a topic, one of the measures anyways, is how long people hang around. Our meetings are an hour and a half. For this one, it was close to an hour afterwards. There were still probably half a dozen or 8 or 9 of us still in discussion about this, largely to do with the self-image topic. So that was great sharing of ideas. So I'll just quickly run down a few ideas that I had on the topic. I had read off a little blurb that I had written, and see what it does. See if there's something in here for you. Maybe there is some idea that might resonate with you. I'll largely read it here. So, when I looked up the word self-image, the term self-image, the hyphenated self-image in my computer's dictionary here, I found that, and I'll quote it here, the idea one has of one's abilities, appearances, and personalities. When I looked at that definition, I thought the key word in there is idea. Because everything else is pretty straightforward, right? The idea. Not that I had to look up the word idea, but I thought, hey, I'll look it up just to see, so I get a reference point for everybody you can share with. Looked up that word in the same dictionary, and among other ideas, other definitions that were there, one that really jumped out at me was that, and I quote, an opinion or belief or a feeling that something is probable or possible. That's interesting, isn't it? Because it's opinion, belief, or feeling. Doesn't mean it's concrete, right? What does this mean then for our quality of life? Because all of these topics, once again, help to point us towards ourself so that we can help ourselves to improve the quality of our life experiences. We can all likely agree, you and I in this case, there's not a whole lot of all of us, there's you and I, you watching me talking, right? We can likely agree that self-image of some sort is not what we really are. We can rather realize that it's external to who we are, in a way, right? Because we look back, it's an opinion or belief. It's not fundamentally what we are. Now, if our self-image is superficial and external, and is more accurately opinion, belief, or feeling of what we are, then it may indeed be unfounded. It may be false, right? These images of ourselves may in fact be delusions masquerading as the truth. Masquerading as the truth. So if we find, in other words, that our self-image seems to be holding us back, self-images seem to be holding us back in life. The next logical question we can ask ourselves is it possible to change our self-image? Well, to begin to answer this question, it might be helpful to ask a few preliminary questions, or at least one preliminary question, which might be, if it's possible to change anything else in life, is it possible to change this? If it's possible to change our opinion or belief of something else, why not about the image of ourselves? Helpful question maybe, because through asking questions then we can maybe get answers, right? From my experience, anyways, I'm going to talk somewhat about myself, because who else, what other self-image experience can I talk about? It would just be making stuff up if I didn't talk about my own experience, right? From my experience, the answer to that question is yes. However, it's not necessarily easy. I'm not saying it's easy, I'm just saying yes. And it seems to come down to a few factors. Normally along the lines of, in my case, how badly I want the change, number one, and also how intertwined that image is in the mix of all I see as the obstacle that I want to overcome. Now, how does this change work for me? First of all, very first thing is, the way I like to look at it is forget about getting rid of the self-image, or actually even trying to change it. That may sound kind of strange. However, what I found is by putting the focus on something, either for or against in a way, seems to be an exercise in futility, for the simple reason that by putting attention on something, seems to breathe life into it. So you get more of what I put attention into. In other words, we've all heard the common terminology like law of attraction and karma and Newton's laws of force of action, equal opposite reaction, this sort of thing, right? It's like what we put our attention on, we get more of. That, along that lines. So that doesn't work. Okay, what works better? What works better for me is basically to turn my attention towards what I would rather have, and in so doing, turning the unwanted self-image into almost like white noise, ignoring it. And that which I want to put my attention on is something which is more deeply me. And by doing so, I realize that the self-image, the unwanted self-image, say, and indeed any concept of self at all, is more of a symptom or a result of what I am rather than what I am, if that makes any sense. And I want to listen to that again, but it's a symptom or a result of what I am rather than what I am. Now, to make it clear here, I make no claim of a knowledge, an absolute knowledge of what I am. However, it stands as perfectly logical for me to conclude that if I am created based on the logical reasoning that I exist, then there must be that which creates me. Because if you create something, you build something with your hands, it exists now. But you can backtrack and see that you created it. So for me, logical extension, I'm not trying to put forth any sort of a religious or doctrinal thesis here. I'm just using my logical extraction here, and just follow me through here. You can label it whatever you want in terms of what your belief system is. But I'm just saying, we can follow this through and it makes logical sense. So when I hold to that logical arrived at, yet simple understanding, it seems to me that my self-image, any one of them, at any time, is really an aggregate of inputs from my truer self. which I'm going to call it my truer self sometimes, that which creates the self-image, or the self, right? If that makes any sense. From this perspective, I find it much easier to reason and in fact intuit that the opinions and beliefs in support of self-image have no backing unless they are supported by me. And even if someone tells me something about myself, no matter whether it's praise or ridicule, any one of those extremes, it only becomes part of the aggregate when I accept it. Now that acceptance can be conscious acceptance. It can be kind of like a hidden or subconscious acceptance. Without thinking about it, it's just like sometimes we have these absurd ideas which we take as fact. But they're kind of, we never really thought about it. But nevertheless, because it's like the constitution of where we are at the moment. They can be subconscious or unconscious, but yet by not thinking of them otherwise, we kind of, in that respect, accept them. If that makes any sense. Self-image, then, I would say, is a construct put together by what we really are. That which enables the opinions, beliefs, and feelings, as absurd or as correct as they may be, to fill our awareness. Second, the next step which works for me is to consciously and rationally become aware of what I really am in a more truthful way, which is once again that which creates the opinions and beliefs by my agreement with them. The result of this exercise is that I can see how, by that strong belief and that strength of opinion, that these senses of self, or these self-images, only take on a color of truth. If you ever heard that term, the color of. Which means that they kind of take on a substance, even though they might not be based in any reason. But even though, that's why they become almost like a delusion, because they have the feeling of truth as well. So not only are they opinion or belief, but they take on the feeling of it. So they have the color of the truth, but they're not necessarily the truth, right? Finally, by coming to this logically arrived at recognition that I continually create the image of self, it becomes quite logical that I can likewise create a different image of self. Does that make any sense? If we can create, build that chair over there, we know we can build that chair, we can build another chair, right? That's what I mean by the logic, the simplicity of this. It's, hopefully I'm not oversimplifying it. But to me, I don't think we have to complicate these things as much as we sometimes think we have to. The whole process is strengthened by being honest with myself. For example, if there is an opinion or belief which I previously held, which cannot be supported by reason, I can let it go. With this way, rather than having to change my opinions and beliefs, they can simply evaporate on their own in the face of my truth, which is supported with reason and evidence. In this way, I have found that self-image has a chance then to expand, for the simple reason that the absurdity of limitation, superficial impressions of self, and so on, no longer make any sense. So the self-image then becomes that which is not so much definable by which often definition is, or the defining of something is putting it in a box, and it's an expression of limitation in a way. So we get to a point where the self-image now is no longer defined, except that there's great possibility for us. So we become people of possibility, and that becomes an image in a way, if you will, but it's a greater sense, it's a greater panorama, if you will, rather than just a small image. It's a greater panorama of possibility. But in summary then, by forgetting about having to change self-image, by consciously and rationally becoming aware that what I really am is the maker of the image in the first place, and by recognizing that in the same way the unwanted image was created, so can the expanded image of self be created. To me, this has made a huge difference in my life, and I hope there is something for you here as well. Thank you for listening. It's been a joy, and I hope to see you at Coffee Chat or one of our events coming up in the future. Talk to you again. Bye-bye.